You spoke, Rabbi Jacobson, about obviously the opposition, the Mitnagdim, some of the great leaders in the early days. What was the trajectory of the opposition? How did it play out? Was there a reconciliation, or was there some kind of a synthesis that both sides kind of moved their positions? Maybe Hasidim becoming intellectual branches, though, as you stated, they had the Torah scholars, but how did they reconcile? When did they reconcile? And was there some kind of a movement that brought them together?
Yeah. So the beginning of that position, it starts in the 1770s. The Baal Shem Tov passes away 1760. And in the next decade, there's very profound opposition because his students, who were all very well-versed and influential people, begin to spread the teachings more and more. And there's great opposition. There's even a cherem, a ban, an excommunication edict issued against the Hasidim from some great rabbis, which has a very, very detrimental effect and splits the Jewish world. The opposition will increase over the next few decades, especially in the regions of Belarus and Lithuania, because those are the centers of Lithuanian Torah study in the world where the opposition was the greatest. There would be another ban issued a few decades later, even more severe and more lethal. And these would have devastating effects on the social cohesion of the Jewish people, on the unity of the Jewish people, and on the way people looked at the Hasidim and treated the Hasidim. In many communities, there would be all types of conflicts, financial conflicts, and of course, ideological conflicts, and conflicts in shul, and sometimes even physical. Rabbi Schneerson of Liadi, the founder of Chabad, who lived in Belarus and attracted many followers from Belarus and Lithuania, he, his colleague Reb Aaron of Karlin, and his student, and many of the Hasidic centers in that era, they became the greatest targets. There was a Masira, there was a Jew, a rabbi, who informed to the Tsar's government, Rabbi Schneerson of Liadi was a criminal of heinous crimes, to the point that there was a question if he might receive capital punishment after he was arrested. But he was arrested in 1798 under very, very serious charges. They were blood libels. But I read the document of accusation, and basically they accused him of destroying Jewish life in Russia and encouraging a lifestyle of frivolousness, anarchy, and complete moral depravity, also attempting to overthrow the Tsar. Can you imagine? That's serious stuff. They almost killed him. He was liberated on the 19th of Kislev, 1798. Until today, it's celebrated. Yutas Kislev, Yat Kislev, the Hasidic world is a very big celebration. They call it Chag HaGeula. The Hasidim understood it, that the physical prosecution down here was a manifestation of the spiritual opposition in heaven to the revelation of these secrets of Torah. And when he was liberated, they saw it as a stamp and validation from heaven that now everything can be spread and promoted and publicized, the deepest teachings of Kabbalah that came out through the filter of Hasidic philosophy and literature, which made it accessible to the masses. The Vilna Gaon passed away in the year Tovkuf Nun Ches, that would be Sukkot. So he passed away in the year 1797. The end of 1797, around October 1797, Sukkot Tovkuf Nun Ches, the Vilna Gaon passed away. For a few years, some of his followers felt, this is going to weaken the fight, because he really was the face of the opposition, and his prestige and renown were of, unique power and for good reason. So it continued for another few years, but what happened was, slowly but surely, it just fizzled out. It almost faded away into oblivion. What happened was, basically, just put it bluntly, reality prevails. That's its nature. Reality comes from the word real. Whatever is real prevails. Maimonides experienced a serious fate, a similar fate. The works of Maimonides were burnt a few decades after his death. They were burnt. The works of Maimonides were put under ban and excommunication, and Maimonides himself was seen as a very, very controversial figure a few decades after his death by some of the great sages in France and Spain. You had the Rameh, you had the Rabbi Yoina, some of the greats who criticized the Rambam. What happened was 50 years later, many of them retracted, and then it fizzled out because people just saw the holiness and the power of the Rambam's works in terms of spreading Yiddishkeit and Torah. What happened was, after a few decades, two things happened. First of all, the truth came out. The whole basis of the accusation of the Vilna Gaon was the Hasidim and Chassidus are going to destroy Jewish law and Jewish life. They don't care about mitzvahs. They don't care about Torah. They're mad. They behave in a lunatic way. They're irresponsible. They destroy the infrastructure of Jewish life, and they violate Jewish law. Suddenly, what was emerging from reality is that here are Jews in the millions who are not only dedicated to Judaism, but they're dedicated to Judaism with a unique enthusiasm and passion. It's turning people on to learn Torah, to observe mitzvahs, to deeper love of God, love of the Jewish people, love of Torah, love of halacha. It spoke for itself, even if there are ideological differences. Something else happened, and that is the rise of the Haskalah movement. The rise of the movement they call the Enlightenment movement, which came from Western Europe, from England and Germany and France, and started to travel to the East, suddenly created a whole new challenge in the Jewish world. As the walls of the ghetto were crumbling in Western Europe, with the Enlightenment, following the French Revolution, etc., for the first time in history, Jews were allowed entry into the larger world, but it came with a price. As one of Napoleon's commanders said after the French Revolution, to Jews as individuals, we'll give everything. To Jews as a people, nothing. Suddenly Jews were torn. Who are we? We want to become part of the conversation of humanity. We want to enjoy the egalitarianism, the fraternity, the liberalism, the progressiveness, the individual human rights of the Enlightenment. But it's exacting a price. It demands of us to give up something. How far do we go? Many Jews converted. The reform movement was created in order to deal with this. And with these ideas started to travel to Eastern Europe, all of the Jewish communities, the Hasidim and the Misnagdim, were now faced with a very, very profound challenge. And mature leaders on all sides realized we're going to have to work together. We're going to have to work together to strengthen traditional Judaism. Credit is also due to the leaders on both sides of the next generation who understood that even if there may be differences, for example, in some groups, they're going to emphasize this aspect of Judaism. Other groups will emphasize this aspect of Judaism. What unites us is much deeper than what divides us. And we will not be able to build Judaism if we kill each other. We're just going to destroy ourselves and destroy the others in the process. And therefore, just within a few decades, more or less, there was peace. When I say peace, it doesn't mean there were no debates, there were no arguments, but that level of animosity and mistrust, I would say, faded into oblivion, at least to a significant degree, at least in most of the communities. Certainly remnants remained, and there was always humor from the Hasidim about the Misnagdim and the Misnagdim about the Hasidim, jokes. Not all the jokes were always done with the best of spirit. There were certainly, conflicts here and there, certainly. But again, among the Misnagdim community itself, there's conflicts. The Hasidic community itself, there's conflicts. But that continued, but on such a global and colossal level, it certainly was diminished significantly. And some of the great leaders who contribute to this from the Misnagdim side were people like Rabbi who was the greatest student of the Vilna Gaon, and he refused to oppose the Hasidim. His son, Rabbi Volozhin, as well. And then most of the Lithuanian sages already did not continue the battle. They did not continue the war. They saw that simply the accusations are irrelevant, not true, counterproductive, and frankly destructive, and absolutely no need for it. And they also started to realize the value that Hasidism brought for so many Jews and for so many communities. I would also say that Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was a grandson of the Tanya, and he was born in 1749. 1789. He passed away in 1866. He was the greatest Hasidic leader in Russia at the time, the third Chabad Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch. He was a grandson of the Tanya, of the founder of Chabad, and he made it a goal to travel to all of the great communities in many of the great communities in Eastern Europe, especially in the area of Russia and Lithuania, and meet all of the greatest rabbinic sages from the Misnagdic side, and that contributed enormously to the sense of cohesion and peace.